Hi there. In this video, I will be talking about my analysis for the social skills project for SPED 871. In this project, I started off with kind of a good idea of the student that I wanted to work with, but not a firm concept of whether or not I wanted to implement social skills training or self-management with her from the get-go, because she was a new student to me, but it was very clear that she had a social skills need and a deficit there. So kind of through some deliberation, I decided that the self-management would be a more appropriate intervention for her, because she is in high school and she's a relatively responsible student, although she does need prompts to remind her to do things and to kind of be on track of that, on top of her own behavior and monitoring all of that as well. So I started off with an idea of the student and then decided to do self-management, and then started to collect baseline data, but I realized in the process of collecting baseline data and then figuring out when to do the intervention and then take the data after that, that I only see her every other day, really, because I teach high school and they're on a block schedule, so I see her any day that I teach her in English, but on the days I don't teach her, she is sometimes in my room, but it's not really a good time to pull her out, because it's usually during a break or during lunch, when she has her, when she's relaxing or she's having her own time that I don't want to interrupt, because it's important for her and necessary for her to be successful. So I found that to be pretty difficult in the process of actually implementing the strategy. The goal was for her to be able to speak to a student or an adult who's in her immediate vicinity with an appropriate volume and pace in about 80% of observed interactions. This would be an increase of about 30% from the baseline to the goal behavior. So she often would walk into rooms or begin conversations at a much higher volume than was socially appropriate, and then would kind of get quieter as the conversation went on, as she saw the modeling of the adult or of the other student. But just starting off, she would speak very loudly. So I wanted to target this behavior, and so I sat down and had a conversation with her just about that, and I just told her that I was going to expect her to monitor her own, keeping track of her, of when she would speak loudly or at the appropriate volume, and that I would check in with her daily to see how she was monitoring that. So that part she did really well at, was the, remembering every day that I was, trying to keep track with her on how her volume was going and how she was interacting with people. That all went pretty well. The part that I kind of ran into, another little hurdle there, was that she didn't really keep physical track of her own use of the appropriate volume or not. It just didn't fit into how she operates, and so trying to make her do that was confusing to her and didn't really make a lot of sense. But I saw her implement it pretty much immediately after we had the conversation. I had to remind her a few times, and as you will see in the graph in the data collection on the written report, she did need still some prompts and some reminders to speak at a more appropriate volume, but for the most part, she did accomplish the goal in speaking at the appropriate volume, even though the self-management aspect was not necessarily a written part, but more so of her kind of keeping mental track of it in her own mind. So yeah, that was kind of the process of working with her and getting her to this point now where she is about at 80% of the appropriate volume, although some days it's different. She has some off days, and those definitely can affect how she interacts with others and her social skills. But on the whole, she's gotten a lot better, and she does remember every time we have a conversation about it. She remembers, oh yeah, I'm supposed to speak at the correct volume. So I think in all, what went well was the fact that she did the task. She accomplished the goal. What could have been better was me finding new ways to help her with that self-management piece. I think I kind of, once it didn't really seem to work, I kind of let that piece go, and then was happy to see that she was still having success in it. And I think not seeing her super often, or as often as I would have liked, or being able to work with her in those times that I did see her, definitely had an impact on her ability to keep track of that, and for me to keep track of her. So just keep in mind when looking at the data that it was over a relatively short period of time, and that ongoing throughout the whole year, we'll probably see an increase in the behavior of the inappropriate volume at certain times, and we'll probably always need to be reminding her to do this. She is a very capable student, but she does require help to stay on task with things, and that includes her social skills and her behavior. So I'd like to continue to implement this strategy with her as periodically as the year goes on, and see how she grows in those ways. But overall, I think the project went pretty well, and I was very happy to see that she did grow and had success with it. So that's it. Thanks.